welcome to Behind the Build. I am your host, Jonathan Jacobs, and today on the program, I have what is starting off with one of the partners of ZGF, or if you're American, ZGF. When Gene talked about shaping the PDX terminal, he spoke about the honesty of materials, the craft of assembly, the emotional clarity of space. That's exactly what Sound Solutions brings to the table. They're acoustic panels made from wood, PET, and aluminum, and their range of performance cladding systems strike the same chord. Visually expressive, technically smart, and rooted in sustainability. Think about the way a space like Nike's world headquarters demands both sound and visual identity. Large, open volumes, brand-forward interiors, complex ceiling geometries. That's where materials like Sound Solutions' PET-based absorptive surfaces or metal ceiling clouds quietly do the work, managing echo, creating comfort, and holding up under use. And when it moves outside, the rain screen systems, terracotta, stone, or aluminum, echo the same values: high performance envelopes, engineered air barriers, and long-term resilience, especially in climates like the Pacific Northwest. These aren't just finished materials, they're a language. And Sound Solutions helps architects speak it fluently, indoors and out. If you want to learn more about them and their products, email me at Jonathan, Jonathan, at waldenhomes.ca. I have Gene Sandoval with me today, and later in the episode, I will have Sharon Vandermeulen joining as well.
That's right.
And so Gene and I spoke a little while back. Gene, thank you for joining. Thank you for participating in this. I've been looking forward to this for a very long time.
Well, thank you. Hello, everybody. I'm Gene Sandoval with ZGF Architects, and I'm excited to talk to you and chat and, talk about anything and everything.
Yeah, well, so as before we get into your history, who you are, what led you to where you are, I want to just establish a few of the important elements about the practice. Okay. So in some basic research, over the course of decades upon decades, ZGF has won over 850 design awards.
Really? Who's counting?
Actually, AI is counting. Thankfully, AI is counting. I didn't have to count that. And the portfolio ranges from healthcare and research facilities and academic buildings, mixed-use developments, corporate campuses, museums, transportation facilities, eco districts, and they have offices all across the US and in Canada. There are over 800 employees.
That's right. That's right.
So, with all of that said, I am talking today with two. We'll start it off with one, Gene. Gene, can you tell everyone a little bit about Gene, I know you started with the practice in 1989, but I want to talk about your history prior to that. What led you to joining the practice, but more importantly, actually, what led you into architecture?
I guess I'm one of those people that from a really young age was allured by the notion of building. It fits the title of the show, right?
Yeah, definitely.
I think it started off with growing up where I come from, the Philippines, being in the islands. There was a lot of boat building, the curiosity of how people built the boats out of really most simple materials available to them.
Mm-hmm.
Then when I got older, my family had a shipbuilding and corporation, and my dad was managing one or two of the shipyards. So a lot of summers, a lot of times I would spend time with my dad being in the shipyard, seeing how people do their thing. And that led me to this curiosity of creation, of craft. And eventually that kind of like I had this natural ability with artistry and from drawing. I've always been able to draw for some reason. And I've always been able to imagine things, like I spent a lot of my life in my grade school drawing on my notebooks rather than taking notes.
I was the same.
So I had this kind of imaginary mind.
Yeah.
and I said this a lot of times when then I saw Star Wars. Star Wars blew my mind because I didn't know that you can recreate this whole imaginary world
Yeah.
that is like far beyond what you see. So that kind of really led this idea of like, what is this practice? What is this vocation that I could do it? And that ended up being architecture, you know?
I want to tell you something actually. I just found out about Star Wars.
Uh-huh.
If you can envision, there's this scene, and I just say this because of the artistry of what that movie and what how it changed everything in production.
Mhm.
But there, you know, the scene when Luke and Leia are
Mhm.
standing inside of the Death Star, and they're
Mhm.
not inside the Death Star, inside of one of the ships, and there's the retracting
Oh,
bridge.
the bridge. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the stormtroopers are shooting at them. Do you
Uh-huh.
know that that entire background is actually glass, and it was done by an artist, and they painted it
Yes. To get the depth. I knew
to get the
that.
depth? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And they have to read like that was an amazing film. And now that later on they start to expose that they had to invent everything,
Yeah.
and it was a really disruptive movie for the industry,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah. I
for
can.
the
So
blast, the
pardon me.
blast, right? The blast.
Yeah.
When they do this explosion, they had to try out a blast that would make it sort of miniaturize it so the particles look real in the right scale of the model ships that they were using. No, fascinating, fascinating. So
Okay. So that movie kind of sets you on a path of like mental exploration as to what's possible.
yeah, it's like realizing like shit, they can reimagine a world so different than ours, and that then to like architecture to me. And so very young age, I really knew what I wanted to do. So between 8 and 10 years old, and here where I am, you know.
Well, hold on. That was a big skip. So when you were in high school, were you studying all of the arts, knowing that this was something that you wanted to pursue, or or at that point were you still trying to figure out how you were going to apply that newfound inspiration?
I took a lot of I found myself loving geometry.
Okay.
And again, it came natural. And I took a lot of drawing and drafting and classes that
Yeah.
also was, I love history. And so everything kind of tied together.
Okay.
And when I was in junior high school, it's like, yeah, I think architecture is where my natural ability is. It was daunting because architecture in the Philippines it was a profession that was looked upon, but because of the economy and the state of development of our country, it's kind of a dead end kind of career there at that moment.
Right.
So, and so, but the next thing that what kind of brought me to the States was my we have this history in my family of people turning when you turn 18, you sort of like kind of find your path. And my parents and my uncles and aunt all left the country to study abroad. And fortunately, a big chunk of my other half of my family went to the States. And my dad went to Oregon, University of Oregon. And that's so when I went to, had 2 years of architecture school in the Philippines with the notion that when I turned 18, because I was in college at 16 for some reason.
What?
Yeah, I know. I guess
How?
I started young, and then they did this IQ test, and apparently could start. I started. I think I was a grade one at 6 years old, and then I skipped a grade when I was within grade six. I went directly to high school, and not because I was smart. It just kind of happens
Yeah,
at that.
sure. I like the modesty here. I can tell you didn't want to
No,
talk about it.
I'm like not the smartest guy in the room. I'll tell you that. It's just I would never tell anybody that I'm the smartest guy in the room. So I just had like one of those things that something that I thought I was good at.
Yeah.
It came naturally and just honed it to some degree.
Okay. And comprehension. Clearly comprehension was something that came somewhat naturally to you.
I've always been good to comprehend and fill the room.
Yeah.
Like that's one of my interests too. Like when I was in college, I took a lot of art history, architecture history, art anthropology, marketing, because they all kind of tied together
Right.
in terms of studies that kind of foretell or describe the state of a culture, right? Anyway, so that's kind of like, and my family was, at that time was also involved in politics. I grew up in a political family.
Okay.
And so politics and people and policies are all kind of in my blood.
You say before that there was a kind of a natural progression in your family that you go and explore and figure yourself out at 18.
Yeah.
Were they upset, or was it a part of the path that you would leave the Philippines?
Well, it was contentious.
Okay.
I had a lot of friends that I grew up with. Who were partying like rock stars, you know. It was from Wednesday night all the way to Saturday was party night. It's just a different world, and it was hard to leave that. But
I'm sure.
here we are, and then like leaving. It's hard to leave the comforts of home, but this is the best thing I've ever did was leave the comfort of home, come to America,
You had
go to
applied, right? You had applied to university at 18. You got into Oregon.
Oregon, yeah, and
Yeah.
then great at that time. I didn't know it was one of the best architecture school in the country. I think it was number 7 or number 5,
Wow.
and then come to Oregon. Oh my gosh, it's rainy. I was telling my dad, like, oh my gosh, I think you're sending me to prison with a prison of rain because it's just so rainy. But I thought it was good because it made me focus on school, right? So there you go.
So you arrived and you had no one here. Like you knew no one, or did you?
But when I arrived here, my sister was already going to the University of Oregon.
Oh,
Uh,
she
I
was.
have
Okay, so
my
you had
older sister, and we have some family in town, like maybe an hour and a half or two, because I have 51st cousins, and half of them, migrate to the States, or some of my uncles and aunts stayed in the States and raised their family. So we're everywhere, so to speak.
okay. And what did it look like? So you get into school. Did you feel like there was duplicity between the degree that you had received while you were back home and what you were learning now, or were they a lot of net new information that you were gaining?
Well, it's a good question, because my education in the Philippines is more Beaux-Arts based.
Okay.
So we did a lot of watercolor, hand drawing, really honing that skill of visualization.
Yeah.
And what's amazing about the education in America is in America, you're taught to think, especially in University of Oregon. It's a liberal arts education, very
Okay.
holistic. So that I thought that it was like my skill of I was like first 2 years of school taught me how to visually represent my ideas or
Okay.
my thoughts. Coming to the States in University of Oregon, it taught me how to like speak and explain my thoughts
Yeah.
verbally.
Articulate them. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
articulate it, but also reason. Yeah, like, and that's something I never knew that we were never educated to reason because it's just not part of the culture. It's follow the orders of your parents and follow the orders of the government. That was just the way it is. That's what American education is amazing. It really hones rebels and thinkers and thought leadership. And I find myself like really fitting in there because I'm a rebel and black sheep, rebel, call it disruptor, call it what you might call.
Okay. And tell me, so were there, because I'm curious about this, like this element of the dynamic between having gained that 3-year education back home, coming here to what you're describing now. Were there specific courses that you felt like when you walked in and they started talking about some of those early concepts that really like just shook you to your fiber that you were like, I cannot believe I'm engaging in this now?
What's amazing? Well, 2 years of education in the Philippines at
Oh, sorry,
University,
two.
yeah, University of Santo Tomas. What blew me away is like, oh my gosh, they have this crazy library of resource that I can like find just stuff about architecture. And then the university, like there is such a resource for world view of architecture. There's so many like different thoughts of view about architecture in that school in the moment. And there was like such a strong international community within the student body in itself, but also within architecture. Like half of my friends were from other countries,
Right.
you know.
How many students were in the program when you got accepted? Like how many they let in at that time in a year?
If I guess right, I think there were 120
Okay.
students a
So it's
year.
it's a small program, even though a well-established program, which I've
Yeah,
defined
that
about
was
most.
yeah, that's 120, I think, and that's including in because the first year you're there with interior architects and
Okay.
landscape architects and architects in one school. So I wouldn't be surprised if the architecture program is as undergraduates about 70 to 80 students.
Right.
Yes, it was a really tight and cozy. But then the other thing I realized is this notion of freedom. I have never had the experience of being able to think freely, kind of,
Hmm.
and expand that kind of freedom. So, yeah, it was a fantastic education. It was not an education about a certain style of architecture. It was actually an education about how to think.
The glass in a project like PDX or Nike isn't decorative, it's structural, symbolic, and precise. Curtain walls that stretch entire facades, doors that blur the line between interior and landscape, oversized units that welcome light while managing energy, durability, and movement. That's the kind of challenge the Doors was made for. And we've worked with them and seen this happen on multiple projects with companies like SMPL Design Studio and Eisen Architecture and Drew Mandel Architects. What they offer isn't just hardware, it's threshold thinking. Curtain walls that perform at commercial scale built with European engineering, operable wall systems that allow spaces to open and flow, high performance sliders and folding units that define how a space breathes. These are the systems that support architecture doing more. More daylight, more connection, more control. See how the Doors supports architectural projects with clarity, scale, and craft. You can visit them online at thedoorsforyou.com or you can email me, Jonathan, that's Jonathan at waldenhomes.ca, and I'll set up an introduction to Martin, the owner. Did you find yourself connecting with some of like obviously a couple friends that you would work with, and that I guess since you graduate, you still maintain relationships with, and you get to shoot ideas back and forth, or what does that look like over the years?
Well, it's interesting you say that. My I go everywhere in the world, and everywhere I go, I have a friend that I went to school with or connected because they're everywhere, right? And the friendship that you form during your formative years lasts a long time.
Yeah,
We haven't worked together for better or for worse, but we always have this tech chains all around 24/7 of like, oh, like in awe of architecture. Check this out. And if I go to different countries, I always have friends that I can meet with, and we would
yeah.
just geek out on architecture in our lives. So that was fantastic. We never had that in the Philippines. And I think that's truly one of the magic of America. America is a place where a lot of different cultures and citizens come to get matriculated,
Yeah.
and some stay, some go home and take their knowledge and raise a different, I mean, a great group of new intellectuals within their boundaries.
Yeah, I think I guess one of the things that I in some ways I notice you're right now you're still living in Portland, right?
Yep. I live in Portland, but I work all around the country. This is
Yeah,
just one of my places of residence, so to
right.
speak. Mhm.
Fair. Well, that you arrive there, and this is now where you live. And I find a lot of people that are from the U.S. don't actually stay in the same city that they're initially born in or from. So
Well,
it's like you put your roots down in this city.
no, I actually went to school in Eugene, and Eugene, Oregon is a small college town, the
Oh,
University of
it
Oregon.
is. Okay.
Yeah. And I think at that moment there were like less than 100,000 people living there. And from the place I come from, Manila, there were like 5 million to 10 million people at that moment. I don't know what the statistics was, but it was just a big cultural change.
Right.
But it helped me focus and helped me kind of grow my own, being away from my family and my friends that I kind of grew up with, and that kept me insular. And so I had to pay my own way. And then after college, I ended up being in Portland, which is 2 hours away.
Yep.
I joined ZGF, or it was a Zimmer Gunsul Frasca. It was about at that moment a 30-year-old company
Yep.
that was winning design awards. It was always in the cover of architecture magazines,
Yep.
and joined the firm 89. The firm won the firm of the year in America in 1992. So and it was at that moment already a national firm. So I thought it was like a good benchmark. Then I never thought that I would stay this long because I wanted to go to New York and LA. But at that moment, there was a deep recession, and you cannot even get a phone call back or let alone speak to anybody. And there was no internet, right? You're always
Yeah.
filtered by the reception desk, right?
Yeah.
And you have to write a letter and you have to mail it in the
Mail
post
it.
office.
Yeah. Or
Yeah,
fax it if you were
yeah,
lucky enough to get a fax.
exactly. So, oh no, that was before I was
This,
before fax.
this is before I was as I said that I was like, wait a second. 91 might have been before fax. 92 might have been before fax.
89. I was in 89.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
89. Yeah. I actually want to ask you. So the question I wanted to ask you about, you started in 89 there.
Mhm.
What was the interview process like?
So funny enough, like I,
Who
I told
interviewed
you,
you?
like nobody was hiring. I cannot get past the reception area of any firm in town. I did my sixth firm that I want to work with in Portland, or five that I thought had a taste or a connection beyond Oregon. So I was being pragmatic. I said I need to get employment. I need to work.
Yeah.
And whatever job I have right now is temporary, but I hope it's a firm that I can use as a reference when I move on to go to LA or New York City or whatever big city there is. So CGF was that. Then there's I think two more, SRG and YJH. And so I was running out of money. My sister, who I was living with, said to basically you need to get your rear end going. Borrowed a car. I didn't have a portfolio because I didn't have time to do it. I packed all my models, all my drawing boards, and I knocked on doors. And I just said, "Hey, I'm in town for a short moment here for today. Is there a way that I can, meet with anybody? I am looking for a job." Went around and they loved my resume. And then next thing I know, it was all of them pulled some of their senior people, and I got interviews. And two out of the top three
Yeah.
got offered on both. And then CGF was the one who say like, come back next week. So I took CGF, and the rest is history.
Wow. And were there levels of interviews, or was it just like one interview that you had and that was it?
With CGF, it was just one interview, and I got the job.
Amazing.
It was a different time before than
Yeah.
now. So
And at that time, do you know how many offices they had?
at that time, we had three offices in Seattle and LA, and I believe we're 120 people.
Okay.
And I think I was employee number 68 or 71 at that moment. And now we've been at the biggest, we've been 800 something.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've seen the company grow.
Yeah,
It's
I
been
mean,
wild.
you've probably been a part of that growth, right? In the pitches and winning projects.
I I hope so, but I don't know. You kind of just
So tell me, like, what were some of the first projects that you had the opportunity to work on when you were fresh into the company? What did it look
um
like for you?
I was the kind of guy that I was willing to do anything and everything.
Yeah.
So my first week in the job was actually setting up drawing boards for the office and
Okay.
driving the car to the DMV, the partner scars. And then then I did model shop. I worked in the model shop for a while, and I was an intern helping with. We had a competition, so I was basically the little the youngin.
Yeah.
I was. I remember I did 120 hours. I think my first paycheck, I did 70 or 80-hour weeks for like 3 or 4 months. The first couple of months I was there because we had a competition, and I was a very hungry and
Yeah.
driven person. So then in terms of projects, it was an interesting time.
I,
You know,
before you go to the projects, I just want
yeah,
to say this to anyone that is listening to this. If you are a student in school,
yeah.
okay, if you are a junior architect, an intern architect, and you are complaining of hours, or you're thinking that you're overworked, okay, because you've put in 50 hours in a week, I just would like to remind you what Gene just said. And that was 70 to 80 hours a week for months, but there were weeks where there were 120 hours.
120 hours. I don't 120 hours would be, no, I think the most I did was 110.
110 hours in a week.
Yeah, I think so.
So
Yeah.
again, for reference, that's almost 3 weeks worth of work in one week.
We had a
Right?
deadline. What
Amazing.
to do?
Well, I'm not saying that would I'm look, I'm just saying it because there is a different mentality in some of the up and coming people into the industry, right?
Well, I'm
It's a different time, but
it's a different time and it different takes for different people, right?
totally, totally.
And in my mind, that I believe in the notion of the art of mastery. That's going to take you 10,000 hours, 10,000 times, whatever it is,
Yep.
to be a master everything.
Yep.
And I still, at that moment, I really, believe in learning and I believe in mentorship. I didn't mind like doing all those things. And redlining was the time, you guys, when you go to a sheet of paper and you would erase something and you would draw over it. And you were the draftsman and you have to learn how there's a certain way to write. There's
Yep.
a standard of using your pen. Everything had a standard. So I didn't mind it because it gave me discipline. It gave me a deeper understanding of just the level of complexity these projects and the process of grading stuff.
There's also like fast forwarding your learning process to gain those 10,000 hours almost in half, not quite, but almost in half, right? So
Yeah,
you're
and
taking almost 5 years and condensing 10,000 hours into like 2.5, 2 and 3/4 years. So
it's true. That's I never thought of it that way, but there were it was a joke. I mean, there were moments I would sleep under my desk.
I'm like, again, I'm saying this because, you reach a certain stature of career, and to get to that, there is a lot of time put into it. And there are times, and you have to appreciate that. You got to look back on it and appreciate it because it led you to where you are. And yes, different strokes, different folks, but the work ethic, it's putting your head down. You can complain to yourself about some things here and there about time or vacation or all the rest of it, but if your vision is set on wanting to achieve something, you put your head down and you put the work in.
Well, I left my home, I left my family, I left my friends. I gotta put meaning in it, and I had to
Yeah,
make it because I had to give like, why did I sacrifice that for? And so I think that's part of it. It's
yeah,
also I love what I did, and it was never about a job. It was really about my passion for the craft.
right.
So work was my community, work was my life, work was my craft,
Yeah.
and architecture became my love. So it's all fun, man.
Okay, so I interrupted you to have that little tangent as you were about to get into talking about the projects.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some of those and what did that look like?
Well, the first memorable project, believe it or not, is actually the airport, the Portland airport. So about 33, 34 years ago, I worked on one of the additions in the airport. I was the draftsman, and it was the first project that the office was thinking of doing it all digital. So that tells you that I was the first generation of computer, I would say, adapters. So we actually had to learn how to use AutoCAD on the project.
And so this is mid 90s?
No, this is like 93,
Yeah. Okay.
92.
Early 90s. Yeah.
Yeah, so actually, you work during the day, and then we would take classes in the evening. The firm paid for a class in the evening how to learn how to use AutoCAD, and then we would apply in the project. And then we have a few stations of AutoCAD in the office, and then people would do for that project. We would do double days, two sets of people. Like people would work in the morning, and then some people in the evening because we didn't have enough computers yet.
Right.
They were hard to get by, right?
And just as again for reference for those that are young here, these are not computers that are you'd assume are like a MacBook Air. Okay,
Yeah.
this is not the case. These are
It's as
big
big as your
computers.
refrigerator or little refrigerator. So now going at that time, the memory was so weak that we were doing this truss system.
Right.
So to that point, the memory was so slow that you cannot regenerate you cannot save your work. If you save your work, it would take 3 hours before you can work on it again.
Right.
So it was kind of scary. So like there was a joke: don't ever hit the regeneration button because it's gonna take forever.
And were you not worried about like somehow you had like a power outage or that like when you eventually went to save, you would have lost the work?
Yeah, it's just a sense of like again, reality is what you are faced with, right?
I guess.
It
Yeah.
was just the reality. You don't have to worry. You don't have a choice.
Yeah.
but all is good.
So this is where we're eventually going to go with this is just so if those listening, we're going to get to talking about the most recent Portland Airport addition project. So for me, when you and I first spoke, I didn't realize that one of the first projects you were on was the
Airport.
Portland Airport,
Yeah.
and that your career has been so beautifully circular to come back to that. And
Well, that's such a meaningful place for me because beyond that, it was my port of entry to the United States.
yeah, this
It was also the first place that I entered to after leaving my country. I've never left the Philippines until going to America. So I was fresh off the boat, man.
Have you ever wrestled with a window sizing disaster on site or had a staff member quit kind of mid sprint or faced ground conditions that completely blow up the schedule? Well, you're not alone. And you don't have to figure it out solo, even though that's what you've done your whole career. Join me for Inside the Challenge. It's the design journal created by the community for the community. It's where you, the architect, a designer, a consultant, share real problems and the ingenious solutions that you use to solve them. Think of it like a digital campfire, minus the smoke, and with more actionable takeaways. This week's newsletter features Bill Dewson tackling the intricacies of a heritage project, as well as Anne Marie Armstrong decoding the complexities of converting a structure with a major addition above while living below, and more to fuel your week and your workflow. Have you got your own story with a smart fix? Record a quick video when it works for you. Share with the community and become part of the solution network. You help others and in turn gain insight into how others are solving exactly what you're up against. Register now by shooting me an email at jonathan@waldenhomes.ca. Let's stop pretending perfection is the norm. Inside the Challenge is where real practice gets real. First time when I first spoke to you about this, we had that initial conversation, and I was like emotional when you were telling me this because of how impactful that could be as a person to leave your family behind, and your first experience of a new country is walking off that plane.
Yeah, and walking off that plane and having like so many years later, having the opportunity to recreate that front door,
Yeah,
the global front door to your adopted second home, right? It's incredibly like it's a privilege, it's
yeah.
an honor, and God, like when you can't fuck it up, man. I mean, that's kind of scary. But again, it's when people are talking about this, there's a lot of people that moved to this country to make this country better
Yeah.
in America. And we are just here to be a part of a culture to make it better and be thankful for what opportunity this country has given. I mean, only in the United States that an adopted son, so to speak, could recreate one of their cities or the state's front door. I mean, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
Well, so okay, so I'm gonna bring it back. I'm stumbling over my own words because I agree with you and I absorb that. So in the early '90s, you're in this. You're working on a new edition at the airport. You're
Yep.
working in AutoCAD.
Yep.
You're working in many ways around the clock.
Yep.
And then what does it look like as your career begins to pick up momentum? You go from being a junior, and when does that first promotion come to you, and what does it look like for you? How does it feel?
Well, I think they were shell shocked to some degree because, well, Portland was a very different state at that time.
Yeah,
I'm and whatever you perceive Asian people as, Chinese or Filipinos, to be very different. I'm not a passive individual. I am expressive of my vision, and I had a strong belief of where I want to go. So to some degree, I don't think that initially that I was embraced. It took them 8 years. It took me 8 years to become an associate.
okay.
Normally other people are getting it 3 years. And then another year and a half to become associate partner, and then another year and a half to be a principal, and then 2 years later I was a partner. So there was like first 8 years, they're getting used to this troublemaker. And then the troublemaker kind of like in the 8th year of the career going like, man, like this guy is like, I think he's learning our ways and taking us somewhere other places. And then all the way to like acceleration. Like I was a partner at 37. So that was like fascinatingly young, right?
And did you tell me, like, did you go home the day that that was presented to you and just like sit down and like revel in the accomplishment of what that meant for all the time prior to that and now what it was going to look like going forward?
No, actually, I have to paint the image. I was asked to come to office at 7 o'clock the next day. I heard the news about, I think late afternoon, I believe it was a Tuesday, to come or Wednesday to come to work at 7 o'clock in the morning the next day to meet with three partners. And I was thinking like, holy crap, I am getting fired. So and so I couldn't sleep. And then I went the next day. I went to this office like 7 o'clock. Nobody was there. So we don't start till 8:30. And sat in an office with my three partners, all in the late 40s, mid 50s, some gray-haired men. And they sat across the table, and I'm on the other end of the table, this young punk, and I was like, okay, why are we here? And they said that, well, you know why you're here. And I said, I don't. It's either, and like, we're going after a project together. You want to talk to me? But it's really weird because there's three partners in front of me and then the other thing is I'm getting fired. And then they started laughing and they said, no, it's, we're actually offering you a partnership. And I said, are you shitting me? And it's like, stop shitting me. And they did it like multiple times. And I was shaking my head because I thought they were kidding me. And it was totally unexpected. Though it's always been in my dream, I didn't know it was the right time. And they said, why? I said, have you seen this? This is exactly what I did. I said, have you seen this? And they said,
Just so we're referencing this, Gene's just circling his face with his finger to say,
yeah,
like, this is who I am.
yeah, this is like 2005, a partnership that was 15 partners, all middle-aged white male and in Oregon, Portland, Oregon, offering this brown kid a partnership. And it was unheard of, right? I didn't expect it to happen that time. I thought it was going to take more decades for them to even get there.
Right.
But they looked at me and they said, that's exactly why we want you, because you are going to give us a different outlook and face, and we think you're it. So I said, well, let me think about it. I didn't take it. I said, I need some time to think about it. It took 2 weeks to think about it. And the reason I said that, because in my heart, I needed to talk to my friends, my close friends in the firm, and ask them if it's going to change our relationship.
Right.
And they said, no way, it's absolutely great. We're going to be with you and we're going to be still friends. That was really important for me. And then the second thing was I looked at the landscape of the firm and the office, that if I were not to take the offer, who could it be? And the prospect was not very bright. And so I talked to my friends, say, like, Gene, if you don't take it, it's going to fall in the wrong hands and we will be behind. So 2 weeks later, I went to New York for 2 weeks to with my girlfriend and now my wife.
I was
And
literally going to ask you that
yeah,
question next.
yeah,
Did
yeah.
you have to confer? Were you married at the time? Did you have kids? Like,
No, my wife, my girlfriend, then we went to New York and I told her, she goes, are you ready for that? Because like, and I said, no, I think, but if I don't take it, it might not come back. And
right.
if I'm going to work in this firm, I rather, so I need to consider. And then I asked one of my mentor, my closest partner, Greg Baldwin, and I said, Greg, this is my dilemma. And he told me this line. He goes, Gene, would you be happy one day to look back that you always just slept in somebody else's bed, or you want to make your own bed? And I left that meeting and I said, yeah, I want this job.
Right.
And
And so what came with it, Gene? Like, what were some of the, do you remember at that time, like what were some of the major role changes that you experienced that really altered your day to day and what the next few years of your life would look like? What were some of those changes?
well, I lost some friends. And or I would say I found out who my real friends are.
Right.
And I was surprised at, I knew that there were going to be some disappointed people because they were waiting in the limbs to be partner.
Right.
And the partnership skipped a generation. So there were some people that didn't talk to me for years
Wow.
because they were resentful. And I was also very young, right? At 37. So it took a while, but it just got used to. And then from that point on, in my mind, had an idea of the kind of clients that I think we needed, the projects that I personally needed to do to push me and push the firm.
What do those look like?
One of the first thing I said is that we need to be, because they're in Oregon,
Yeah.
and I said we should have Nike and Phil Knight as our client. And they asked me why. I said because one, it's a great innovative organization,
Yeah.
and Phil Knight was going to be a great philanthropist. And then the second thing I said is that we need more diversity in the partnership. Those are the two things I said in my first partner meeting. And I think 2 years in 2007, we landed our first project with Phil and Nike.
You were one of the people presenting to them?
Yeah, I was the guy. I
And you
mean,
initiated it all.
yeah, and no, when I did it all, I mean, there's nothing you do at all. That's something that there's any architecture student is that there's nothing done by yourself. This
Well,
is
what I meant is that you were the initiator of let's go pitch, let's go formulate the pitch to win business with them.
it was much more. It was not as direct as that. It was a
Okay.
call that came from a construction company that Nike was interested, or Phil Knight was interested in doing something for the University of Oregon, a football program, a
Yeah.
small remodel. So it was a small remodel. It was a 16,000 square foot remodel. And so my managing partner, Bob Packer, said, "Because let's give it to this young punk. Let's see what they can do." So I guess they turned out okay.
I gotta tell you, just because I just love it. So I actually wrote in when I was in university, I wrote a small thesis, not my main thesis, but a small thesis on the evolution of Nike as a brand and what they did and how Phil Knight took something out of the back of his trunk and turned it into a multi-billion dollar company.
That was actually my desire because one, I love Nike. It was like I have like such profound romance with my first Air Max, not my Air Max, my first Nike Air shoes. And then I love the fact that it was an Oregon company that became a global brand,
Yeah.
right? And it was sexy. Those shoes are so sexy. And I wanted to be associated with that. And then as you get to know the organization, there was an amazing notion of innovation
Yeah.
and also like just do it. They were like talk about they were fierce, they were winners, and they were never afraid of anything. And I thought that was an association with Nike would help mold the firm and myself to a different being. So
So how
so
many people were on, do you remember how many people were on that initial 16,000 square foot project?
there were like four of us that and 16,000 went to 38,000 and it became like the basis of at that moment like the most innovative treatment center for athletes because at that moment the Oregon the school was not getting the very best football program
Right.
but the best football players. So what they want to do is they would take like I would say like if Alabama USC were getting all the 5 stars at that moment the Ducks were getting 3 stars and they were lucky if they get 4 stars. This is the rating, one
Right.
being like you won't even make it to
Yeah.
college
You didn't play
player,
Division three.
a Division One, and then 5 stars. There's like only 5 stars a year from high
Yeah.
school. So we do get 3.5 stars, and Oregon decided like, look, we're gonna make them the fastest, the strongest by treating them right and treating their injury or preventing them from having injury, and then letting if they get injured, letting them come out stronger and healthier. So we use all our knowledge with healthcare and put it in a different way of creating a treatment center that was never been done in college sports or even professional sports for the long time. It was like the very best in the country.
Hmm. Okay. So then you acquire, you help to acquire, or a team helped to acquire Nike as a client.
Yeah.
You check that box off of your list of things that you want to accomplish
Yes.
when you sat down at 37.
And then the second thing was like in 2007, and I wish Sharon would join us, and she's my partner in crime now. She reminded me that I asked her to come to my office, and did I have an office? 2007, or a coffee with her or something, and asked her like, "Would you even consider being my partner in the future?" Because she's leading the interiors. She was a really talented,
Yeah.
she is a talented interior architect, and I thought the two of us together would be a powerhouse. And that was 2007. And that didn't happen till 2018. She became my partner. And then within 6 years, she's the managing partner of the firm. So, I mean, maybe I had a good gut feeling.
Yeah.
And I would say to the 2000, now we have 2018, I think we have like 5 women in our partnership, 6 immigrants, and then 3 LGBT. It's like a total different, like I'm so proud. It's so different now,
Yeah.
for the best. We didn't do it just for the sake of doing it to look good. We did it because it's the right thing.
Yeah. Well,
Right thing. And it was the right people. They're gifted, and their point of view, their lives that they live enrich our culture and increases our job, increases our knowledge as a firm, as individuals, how to like really face the world.
when Gene spoke about the Portland International Airport, he didn't describe structure. He talked about light, material, and memory, about how a space can hold feeling. That's what you sense in homes like our project at Woodycrest, where natural materials like oak and concrete form a grounded base, and a 24-foot skylight draws daylight into the place that matters most. And there, in the heart of the home, sit the appliances, bathed in natural light, not hidden, not afterthoughts, carefully chosen not just for performance but for presence, for their role in bringing people together over food, stories, and shared time. That's the sensibility Kaplan's Appliances understands. For over 80 years, they've helped families find appliances that don't just fit the specs, they fit the space, the rhythm of daily life, the architecture of a home that's meant to last. In the same way Gene spoke of spaces that feel generous, luminous, and intentional, Kaplan's supports kitchens that carry meaning, illuminated by both design and use. If you want to learn more to discover how their curated, hands on approach makes every kitchen feel like the heart of the home, email me at jonathan@waldenhomes.ca. What I find so interesting about this to me, and I think it's something that well, maybe I'm wrong, maybe maybe I could be projecting something, but I don't think so. I think the concept of having those goals and putting those goals down, seeing them, and then working towards achieving them is something that a lot of people need to be doing. Not everyone does, because then you can actually visualize the roadmap to how you want to get there.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm a space cadet. Seriously, I really need like I need some my counterpart to help me organize because I'm a dreamer. I mean, I could stay all day and just dream and watch the sky, and watch the grass grow, dreaming. But I always have like I in my mind I know where I want to be in 5 years. Always 5 years, 5 years for myself, and what I perceive the firm could be in 5 years.
So with that kind of established and understanding, where you want to be and what you want to do with yourself and the goals for the practice and what you want to accomplish for the practice. I know that there have been some like incredible projects in addition to what you've just talked about that you've been a part of. So I'm curious in the time frame that takes you from that project with Nike forward, what were some of the other really important projects that you feel helped kind of lament the practice on a different type of scale and different type of experience for the staff to be able to draw on their creativity?
I would say that, so I'm going to set it back. In the 90s, we had
Sure.
several airport projects that
Yeah.
happened, different places that was involved. And then as I was working with Nike in 2007, there was also the Portland, the port headquarters for the staff. That was a pivotal project going on. And then eventually, I think there was there's two University of Oregon building
Hmm.
that we're doing. And at that moment, I didn't share this with the staff and the firm, but my internal thinking was like, how can we develop this technical design in the firm? So those projects are really making the one, the Jacko was a simple box and everything was aligned perfect. And then 2 years later, the same team kind of grew. And for the University of Oregon, we did the Hatfield Downing Football Center. It's
Yep.
a stack box. And then there are a lot of projects that happen in between here, but this is like pivotal because the Nike was so much in innovation and pushing it that they became a great canvas to really hone the right people. And then the final was the Nike World Headquarters here. We did 2 buildings and we decided, okay, we've done the perfect box. We stopped the box. And then the next building is like, how can we detail and execute something that has all angular? So all of this project was pushing the design team and the technical team to learn how to do it.
Right.
So the previous, like that kind of the same team, the technical team, a lot of them jump into what we want to talk to about eventually is the Portland International Airport.
Yeah.
Because Nike, from what will work for Nike, and is one to do world-class building, and second to fear nothing. Third is to basically do something like Nike is would spend money if they find value, but they also want to make sure it's in budget. So that is their culture. So everything looks expensive, but it's really the best deal. So I kind of those projects kind of fulfilled my intellectual kind of like focus on honing architecture. And then the other part was to me that's never been met was this sort of social and cultural side of building, which tied to my political side of my family, my background, how can you do a building that could lift communities, right? And I think when we got the commission to do the Portland Airport in 2014, and would end up being a significant project that kind of represents sort of the front door to Oregon in the region, I said, okay, how can we take all this technical design proficiency now and how can we kind of like bridge it over to a project that bridges racist community, bring people together. So I think that becomes a Portland International Airport.
Mm-hmm. And did they when you won the commission for this, was there an open RFP or was this an ongoing conversation that because you had done so much work with them over the years?
Because it's a public agency, they always have to have an RFP
Right.
for a certain amount of contract.
Yep.
It was an RFP, and we were competing against the sort of like the big guys that have a lot of aviation, and we were the only one. We only done 1 or 2 airports. One was a really tiny airport in Bandon Beach, and now our continuing work at the airport that began
Right.
in 1954. So, but we won. We beat the big guys, and we were glad. And apparently, it was a close vote. There was one vote that was the deciding factor. It was not a unanimous vote either.
Wow.
We're always the underdog.
Wow. And so what was it about the proposal you feel that you think and did they tell you, like, did you get the feedback? This is why we voted for it?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, they just because of our experience with them, but I think that we get them, we get them. And that's probably one of the reasons that they hired us.
Right.
And the other thing I would say that the other firms competing, they brought schemes to solve the problem. They brought different ideas like building images. And we went there thinking like, we want to go on a journey with you because it's such an important project for the state. Why don't we kind of like reimagine and really and truly learn from you what you want and then learn from what's happening there and create a new phenomenon that's never been done before.
So you didn't bring it, like you didn't come to this with precedent images of what you were going to look to accomplish. It was more
No,
so.
we brought some precedent images of aspirational stuff, but
Oh, okay.
we didn't bring a solution or a scheme, so to speak.
Right. Okay.
So one firm brought a whole model, big model with how they're going to put the roof over. I believe we brought a sectional model to show them like how to open it up because it's a remodel and addition. Before it was like all the series of tiny rooms. That's
Right.
all we. Yeah, maybe they just liked us. Maybe we knew how to like. I don't know. We were lucky.
How many people from your practice were at the meeting, and how many people were on the other side?
Well, because the airports are such big projects, and there's Normally, it's driven by a lot of engineering and other specialty consultant. I believe there were like 17 of us in the interview from our side, and the consultants and Arab, engineering. And I believe there were about six of us from CGF
Okay.
in the interview.
So some of the consultants, like you had consultants that had committed to the idea of this project and came with you to help
Yeah.
promote their own
The,
involvement in it.
yes. So typical, mechanical, electrical, structural, of course, important, and all the way down to aviation and landscape, I think. So
And did you know when you were meeting with them that this was going to be something that would be a mass timber project, or was that something that was developed over time in meeting with them and establishing what the program would look like?
no, it was the RFP was for $180 million lobby remodel,
Okay.
ticket lobby remodel. That's all it was. And as we were dug, it's a good question. Like, how did it become from this modest, well, 180 million is not modest, but from this humble kind of notion to this kind of phenomenal, what people are calling phenomenal building that's being embraced by everybody here, was that we actually sat down with them, we listened what they wanted,
Yeah.
and then work with our engineers and contractors to say, like, look, they want to build something for 50 years. What's the right thing to do? And considering where they're at right now, then considering what's the most effective, better return on investment. There was also 2014, the New York Times published this article about the Cascadian, possible for a Cascadian earthquake that would be a category 9. It's kind of like could happen anytime, right? So that prompted us to dig deeper and get the governor involved when saying that maybe this building should be resilient. And then we realized in our survey of the building, there are actually 12 different buildings all joined together in the footprint that we were going to remodel. So it prompted the curiosity that we probably have to do something bigger, because if we're going to do something, we got to do it right.
Right.
So the next phase was surveying the existing condition, making sure that it's not disruptive because the baggage claim needs to work. We did different configuration where things need to go. Maybe it's on the other side of the runway. We realized that there's so much more money involved if you build a remote terminal, because parking, and you got to do a train and
Yeah.
people. And then we travel all around the world to see the top 25 airports, and all around the country to see all the best airports as architects and consultant. And then we kind of like pick 3 or 4 or 5 that we felt kind of would resonate with our client, that we think captured the words that they used, which is, passenger experience,
Yeah.
flexibility, future proofing. There was like resilience, right, and sustainability. So those airports tend to became, it was Oslo, it was Madrid airport, it was the airport in Helsinki, I believe. There it was Hong Kong, and that's when we flew them. We saw it with them, and they decided, like, man, if we're gonna, like, why can't we do something big in Oregon? And like, Oregon is ready. So by 2017, we had this proposal to, in sort of some degree, the scope of what we have. And that's how it all started. The dream kind of became bigger and bigger. But at that moment, we only had a scope. We had an approach to do a remodel in addition, to keep the existing baggage claim operational, but not thinking of it as a wood project, right? But internally, we thought, like, wow, well, could we have a parallel path? Why don't we do steel or hybrid, whatever it is, the conventional system?
Yeah.
Why don't we do timber? Just because timber speaks so much of our region, and we initially thought it was just not going to pan out, right? Because it's like nobody's done it before. But as we dug deeper inside, we're realizing, like, man, it could actually be faster.
Yeah.
It could be supplied by much closer to town because of a rich heritage here of wood, but it could be touched by much more labor because there's so much more, I think 10 times more wood skill labor than steel. And then the thing that was really fascinating is, like, wow, we can actually keep the money locally. right? And spur the community. Now, looking back, we broke ground. That was also like there's COVID and there's the Ukraine war. And all of those things were very disruptive in this kind of global economy, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
imagine like how much steel spiked, right?
I mean, even basic lumber. I mean,
Yep.
we what we were experiencing on our projects, we saw, lumber went up 3 times as much as what it would normally be. You know,
Yeah. So if it was steel and we would have probably been late on this project because of
yeah,
disruption, or probably couldn't afford it, right? And the way we built it with the lumber, we were able to supply it with the lumber produced within a region. It's
right.
just basic glulam, mass is plywood, but big scale plywood, mass plywood, and
Yeah,
dimensional. So, and then we use screws to put it together. So it's pretty simple, you know?
yeah. Whole roof structure. Yeah, that's timber.
Yeah, it's because everybody. That's another thing. Everybody talk mass CLTs, mass timber. It's not mass timber is many different can take many different forms.
Yeah. One of the things Gene reminds us is that architecture isn't just about form; it's about intention. The line of a stair, the way light meets a tread, the rhythm of material repetition. These aren't incidental details, they're emotional choices. And nowhere is that more evident than in the staircase Berman crafted for our project with Eisen Architecture. At first glance, it appears almost weightless, floating solid oak treads, perfectly mitered landings, and a sharply folded bronze guard that catches light like sculpture. The geometry is disciplined, the angles tight and resolved, but the overall effect is warm and tactile. Set against a backdrop of sculpted white oak panels, the stair moves with the architecture, both as a pathway and a centerpiece. This is what Berman does. They bring deep technical precision to the organic beauty of wood. Their work is not just about structure, but about storytelling, where movement, material, and mastery intersect. In a conversation about building with care and long term impact, Gene spoke about honoring craft. Berman Stairs does that with every stringer, joint, and turn. Their staircases aren't just ways to move, they're ways to experience the space itself. Explore more of their work at bermanstairs.com or email me at jonathan@waldenhomes.ca for an introduction. So, question about this. I told you I had spoken to a number of different people about this project and my excitement about this project. So, I actually had a question from a partner here in Toronto, another architect in Toronto. His name is Bill Dewson. And I had asked him, I said, do you have a question? He loves mass timber and sustainability. So he had a question about this.
Okay.
Bill wanted to know, mass timber structures are natural for prefabrication. So can you elaborate about this marriage of method and material on the Portland airport?
So a great question, right? So when we first start thinking of mass using wood,
Yeah.
I'm not going to use mass timber because it's such a
Yeah.
buzzword. We were thinking about if we can use wood for this project. We had so many different ideas architecturally how to do it. And what we found out is that we were so much ahead of the building technology for wood. So a lot of those things like got cut and it's kind of actually being shown right now and we have a model exhibit showing the wood proposal that didn't make it. So one of the things we did was we building a relationship with Timberlab because Timberlab was this aspirational small company that's willing to change the way wood is made. They were they were tying digital technology and CNC
Hmm.
machining with woodworking. That was actually, I would say, the moment when we said, okay, now we realize that this is Timberlab and the way that digital fabrication has caught up with the way we want to do wood. We can almost start shaping wood as if they were Lego pieces.
Hmm.
So going back, so it becomes really tuned to modular construction and prefabrication because right now their input is parametric model, right? And they would take our model and they would sort it out and they would put the wood. They could either CNC machine it and cut it out of pieces or shape it. So it was kind of like a direct link. And in doing so, these pieces came together and we don't need spacers. When we did with the wood, we just come together and just screw it in place. We save a lot of time. I
Yeah.
mean, it was fascinating. So the question was like, yeah, it's naturally fitted for modular construction in different scale, but also prefabrication.
Yeah. And Timberlab, I think from what I recall you telling me last time too, is that they were a relatively young company, or that the scale of production wasn't in they weren't, as much as they were ready, they didn't know that this was going to be as big a project as what it turned out to be.
Well, it was basically three or four guys that wanted to start an offshoot of Suniton Construction.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
this was going to be their first project. So that's it.
And all of the wood that was sourced for this was all within a certain radius. So what was it? What
Yeah,
was
so then we start thinking that one of the interesting things is like, okay, we know how to do with wood. We know it could come, we can build it faster. That's
Yeah.
one of the things. We were able to build it between 3 or 6 months faster. On a project this scale, that's a ton of money because of this escalation.
Yeah.
It was lighter than steel, so it's lighter to install, and the resources are closer to us, so you have less transportation. And then it's like, hey, what if it came from the small farmers? Like, let's kind of bridge, like let the small rural communities be a part of it.
Right.
So that's when we start digging in, and we realized that there was a lot of sustainable farms within 300 miles that could really benefit from not only harvesting the wood. We said like, okay, why don't we just use it with like a 6x2 or 8x3 that they can cut with their mill, because the money is actually in the cutting, not in the harvesting.
Right.
So that became like, wow, it happened.
And so what were some of these meetings like initially? Like I would imagine that when Timberlab was awarded this project,
Yeah.
these four guys, it was the same as you sitting across from those three partners.
I think it was we came together. It was sort of like the innocence. There's such innocence, and but still a lot of curiosity that allowed a free thinking.
Yeah.
Nobody came to the table with such a perceived notion that it's going to do this or that. We were trying to invent things, you know?
Yeah. Well, they were fresh at this, right? So they have that open mindedness to be able to go and create something together in a
Yeah.
way that if they had been established for 40 years, they might, well, we do it this way.
Yep. And I think one of the things that is different than the other projects, that's never people don't talk about, is that the Portland Airport was done with a technology of wood materials that was available within the region.
Right.
Like glulam has been done for 100 years or more. It can be supplied in Eugene, Oregon, 120 miles away.
Yeah.
Mass plywood is the same thing, which is plywood. And then dimensional wood that's on the rafters everywhere. So it was not any of those exotic conversation about CLT or anything, because at that moment there's only two CLT suppliers in America.
Right.
Yeah, so we were truly creative. Not we didn't think about architecture as just architecture. We looked at the whole thing.
Right.
And like somebody asked me, I said, it's goes when we talk about Port International Airport, we always talk about wood, but it's not really just a wood story. It's actually an ingenuity story. Like, how can we build this building with it's such an economical building, because it's like it's not expensive or it's not cheap. It's in the middle of the range of a project of an airport of this size built in America. So it's mid-price. So like, how can we build it the most efficient way? If there were a lot more steel manufacturing and a lot more milling or anything, could have been steel. If there was a lot of concrete technology happening here, it could have been concrete. If they had the technology for carbon footprint, and concrete was kind of leading the way in Oregon,
Mm-hmm.
and it could have been concrete. So it's wood was because it was natural to the place.
Right. What were some of the toughest challenges to overcome in the initial phase of the evolution of this project?
I would say it's truly when we this pushing, like having the guts to push it to wood, because it's never been done before, was a really difficult decision internally and with a contractor
Right.
and client. we really had to prove all the pieces were tied together that we cannot that it's going to be possible. So that was scary, but we don't we like as a firm we don't turn down good challenges,
Yeah.
and with the you know so here we are.
Yeah, good consultants definitely help make these concepts doable.
Yeah, and then the second thing is just getting the city and the fire testing to make sure that this is actually be able to resist the 2 hour, like be survive the 2 hour fire rating.
Yeah. That was
Mm.
actually one of my upcoming questions was about now fire safety and what did that look like?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of testing that we did with Fire Lab, and there was a lot of involvement of the fire marshal, but also the city and the inspector. And our way and thinking about the way we build it in the prefab yard too helped that because we build it on the end of the runway. We built it 18 feet off the ground. So all these individuals, all the inspectors could see it
Yeah.
firsthand every day.
Right.
And so that prefab yard allowed that kind of relationship with them that brought forth trust.
And
And then
confident. Yeah, the confidence.
confidence. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then second is all the testings we did. We had all the five testing labs that for the charring, but then the assemblies. And then we build it in a way that it's up in the air. So the fire on the ground with all the combustible would never reach it or would take 2 hours to reach it.
Right.
If ever that would happen.
So I was going to ask you, like, what is like some of the best successes, it's like mini successes that you had in this? But I feel like it's almost too easy of a question.
I think
Because there are many wins, right? There's small wins throughout this at each stage. Was there like one big hurdle that you had to overcome through the engineering phase that when you hit that and you passed it, that you were like, oh my God, this is doable?
well, because we have to keep the baggage claim operational for the
Yeah,
whole process, and it's always on the ground floor, and ticketing is normally on the second floor.
right.
So the eureka moment was we realized that if we use 100-foot span, we could go in between the baggage claim, some of the machines, and put new pilings underneath in a very surgical manner and build over the baggage claim. So that's one.
Right.
Second was
Almost like an
finding,
amusement park.
yes, yes. And then the second part was like finding a machine that's like could fit on those rooms that could go down and create those pilings. And then the other moment was getting in connection with Mammoet, which is the Dutch moving company that coming to town, and they said, yeah, 9 acres, we can all move it in one try. That was like, okay, we got the movers to move the roof. So yeah, I mean, and then we had another win was Timber Lab, and then getting Hoffman and Scans get together because they're such great construction partners all along, and they were so good in terms of like designing the notion of prefabrication and the fab yard. Yeah, so there's like so many small moments, small and big moments that add to this. Again, you don't. It takes a village to do something like this.
Of
And
course.
finally, the small but big moment was seeing how people would weep when they first saw the project.
Well, okay, so before you go into the
Yeah.
depth, any depth on that, one of the things that you had told me in our initial call, which has resonated with me, and I think about it all the time with my own children.
Yeah.
Okay. We talked about your son.
Oh yeah.
So because of just how amazing this is. So, when you only really touched on, now your wife, 37 years old, you became partner, his girlfriend, but now wife, you have a kid. So if you can just explain that element alone, because the combination to me of making this whole story and the purpose of this podcast is humanizing what you do, right? So your son, how old was your son when you started this project?
So it's interesting. Like the influence of this project is profound, not only for the city, for our firm, our consultants, but also in a personal matter. We got. It reminds me that we got this project in 2014. One of my oldest son was 5 years old.
Mhm.
So it opened. He was 15 years old. 10 years later, the night before opening, we went there to check it with my son, and I didn't tell him where we were going. We went in, and the first thing he said is like, "Wow, this is what your life been for the past 10 years." I don't know any better anymore. And then second, he goes, this is like a world class. I can be in any part of the world. Then he said, wow, it smells like wood. It's like, it's lovely. This is Oregon. And then we would walk around a little bit more. He said, it's so peaceful. I want to make sure I'll come here 3 or 4 hours before my next departure and just be here and enjoy the space. And they're like, yes. Because there's such a really primal kind of like unadulterated kind of reaction. I never asked him to say so, and he didn't even know we're going there. But for him to feel that, yeah, that's great.
Yeah, look, man, as Gene, as a fan of Nike, Portland's a place I've always wanted to go because I love the concept that Nike started there. But then I think when I emailed you about doing this and talking about you and talking about the practice, but talking about this project, I was saying how like I just want to like fly to Portland and just hang out in the
No,
airport.
I think you should come. I think that my fascination with Nike, it was like Nike is from a little state from Oregon that made it big and
Yeah,
made amazing things. And for a firm that came out of Oregon, I thought we can make it big, do something big and disruptive and memorable. So that's why I kind of, I think our trying those paths together is to me enticing.
yeah. And you think about what you said early stage of this discussion about what it was like when you entered for the first time into the US, into America, and you walk into the airport, and now what the next generation of new immigrant gets to experience when they walk in to this place and they think of what the possibilities are, that one of the lead design people on this was a new immigrant to the country.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Like,
amazing,
like,
But that's always been the story of America, right? Saarinen, right? Saarinen did a lot of those airports, and I think he's first or second generation. Let's check that. Like, let's see, like, if he was actually a Aero Saarinen, if he was a first generation. Yeah, I was a Finnish American architect. Yeah.
right? It's amazing. It really is. It's I mean all of this, Gene, has been so amazing. It's breath of fresh air to hear the discussion about like the evolution of you as a professional and how you have been able to amass such an amazing career to date with so much more ahead of you, and to hear about the evolution of this project. For those of you that are listening now, what I'll tell you is that we're going to do a part two. Sharon's going to join in. We'll talk a little bit with her about the early stages of her career. Gene will be a part of this as well. And we're going to talk in greater depth about the exploration of what this airport turned into as a project. While we've touched on a lot of it now, there's more to get into because Sharon was also heavily designed in the interiors on this. So I want to say to you, thank you for being so gracious and spending so much time with me just now. It has been an absolute pleasure. I look forward to part two and having that conversation.
Oh, thank you. There's so many parts of this project, but it's touching a lot of people, a lot of hearts, and so we love to share the stories.
Yeah,
So,
well, and
sure.
to me like I think to people listening, it's important that the people that were a part of this are the ones that get to tell the story, and it's not up to a critic, and it's not up to a columnist to write something about it. It's in your words. It's from you. It's designed by you, so you should tell it.
Thank you, thank you. This is such an honor, and no, it's the airport. It's a story of its own. It's an airport that is for the region, and I wish that I would like to the people that use it to tell their story, and because it's a space for everybody.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Gene. I look forward to the next conversation. For those of you that are listening now, I would ask you please make sure that you look for the Instagram account that I have. It's called Behind the Build. It's a blue logo, and the reason I say it is because you'll be able to see the visuals of the projects that Gene has described. We'll be posting those, so you'll be able to see what that looks like. You can obviously head over to ZGF's website and you'll be able to see a whole portfolio of their work. I appreciate the time, Gene, and again, look forward to the next conversation.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. It's been a pleasure meeting you, and thank you guys for all listening and having the patience to hear a little bit about our story. So, thank you.
Thank you.